Hi everyone, in this video I want to talk about how to get started working with water-soluble oils. So I'm going to be using the Winsor Newton water mixable oil paint. I love working with water-soluble oils. The cleanup is so easy. With traditional oils you'll have to purchase like linseed oil and paint thinners, and the paint thinner especially is really toxic and can give off really toxic fumes. You don't have to worry about any of that with the water mixable oils. So I highly recommend it if you're a beginner, or even if you've been working with traditional oils for a long time. Maybe you want to get rid of working with toxic materials. I highly recommend checking out the water mixable oils. So these are all the materials that you'll need to get started with painting in water-soluble oil. You'll need a water cup, brushes in various sizes, a palette knife, optional brush cleaner, a palette of some sort, and only 6 different colors of the water-soluble oil paints. So this is the glass palette. It's made of a certain kind of tempered glass, so it's actually quite strong. Students often think that glass palettes are like really easy to break, and so they're really hesitant to get a glass palette. But this is a type of tempered glass that makes it really durable, so even if you were to kind of like drop this, it wouldn't shatter very easily. Some other types of palettes available. You can get kind of like a deep dish butcher pan like this. You can even get these kind of plastic type of palettes that you can hold quite easily. The reason that I like to stick to the glass is that the cleanup is much easier with a glass palette. With these, you'd have to be pretty diligent about cleaning. So kind of right after every painting, you might want to make sure you wash it with soap and get all the paint off. With the glass, what's great about it is that even if you've got some really stubborn, really dried out paint that's clinging really hard to the palette, you can actually go ahead and take like a razor and scrape that off quite easily without damaging the palette. So that's what I really like about the glass palettes. So these are the colors we'll be using in our intro class. As you can see, it's a very limited palette. You only have to get 6 colors for this class. And these are the full-size 200 milliliter tubes. You can opt to get some of the colors in a smaller tube. So they also have these 37 milliliter, which is this small. And so you can opt to get some of the colors in a small size. All right, to place your paint on your palette, it's good practice to organize it kind of in like a rainbow. So we'll start off with the white and try to utilize the very edge of your palette. And you can go clockwise or counterclockwise, doesn't matter, but try to organize it around the edge of your palette so that you'll kind of be working your way in. To mix your colors, utilize a palette knife. If you use your brush to mix your paint colors, you'll end up clogging your paintbrush, and you want to extend the life of your brushes as much as possible. Alright, so just a quick demo of how to mix colors with the palette knife. And so I'm going to go and try to create an orange using the lemon yellow and the cadmium red. So go ahead and grab a little bit there, smash it down. And having an extra napkin or paper towel is great for just easily wiping off that palette knife. And I'm going to grab the tiniest bit of red because, again, this red is quite strong. Smash that down. And you're just going to go ahead and kind of smash it around. It's almost like you're mixing up kind of cream cheese on toast, kind of spreading cream cheese on toast. You can see how strong that red is. You can see how I'm keeping my palette knife fairly flat, maybe just slightly raised to one side, and you're just kind of spreading that out. You can scrape it up, you can kind of pick it all up. And smash it back down. And spread evenly. You can really quickly mix colors together. So here's a nice vivid orange. Try to work in kind of small piles. You don't want to spread out so much all over your palette or you'll run out of space quite quickly. I'm going to try mixing a purple together. We're going to use the magenta and the cerulean blue for that. And the magenta is already quite close to purple, so it creates a really beautiful jewel tone purple. Use this magenta here. And depending on how much of the magenta and how much of the cerulean you use, you can have a warmer purple or a cooler purple. Again, just kind of spreading that evenly. Pick the whole mixture up by scraping it off, smashing it back down, and spreading. You can see how thick it feels. It really does look just like traditional oil. And there's a really nice, beautiful jewel tone purple there. All right, and let's mix green together. I'm going to grab some yellow. And you see we have two different kinds of blues, so you can actually make two different kinds of greens. I'm going to do two separate petals of yellow here. And so this will be my cerulean blue mixture. And it creates a really nice kind of grass green. And this is the ultramarine mixture. And you can see value-wise, the ultramarine is much darker and will give you kind of a darker value. And the more ultramarine you add, you can get even like a really nice kind of deep forest green, something like that. Really beautiful deep green. So just to show you kind of the traditional painting process for oil, you would do what's called like an underpainting, which is in one color. And so you will choose kind of a color that's really fitting for that reference. And so here you can see an underpainting of a landscape done in yellow ochre. You can be as detailed or as loose as you want in your underpainting. This would be more of a looser one. And your underpainting is the only process where you should be using more water. And so with the water-soluble oils, you don't need to use linseed oil, which is what you would use for traditional oils. And so to get kind of a thinner wash for your underpainting, you would have to use water. And in essence, it'll kind of look and feel like painting with watercolor in the beginning. So after you do the underpainting, you would work on top, and you want to use very minimal water once you're working on top of the underpainting. If possible, you shouldn't use any water at all. And the reason for that is just like with traditional oils, you're in danger of getting kind of a crackly effect once the paint dries. So here's a painting that I've done where you can kind of see some of that crackling happening to the painting there. And so the reason for this is how the paint is going to dry. And so the reason for that is you always want to work fat over lean. And that means all your thin layers are underneath and all your thick paint, that fat layer, is on top, because of how quick the thin layers are going to dry and how slowly the fat layers are going to dry. They're different drying times. If you have something that's drying really quickly on top, it's going to pull that paint that's underneath and crackle it over time. So you want to make sure that you're working fat over lean. So I just wanted to quickly show you what it would look like to paint with the water-soluble oil. And so I'm going to paint kind of a blue sky back here. And one of the main things to remember when painting with the water-soluble oil is that you have to mix enough of the paint color that you need to cover the entire surface that you need to cover. So a lot of people, they just don't mix enough paint. They'll run out of it and use water to kind of thin out that paint to really spread it around. And remember, you want to use really minimal amounts of water, because if you thin it out with water, you're going to get a really thin paint. And the great thing about oil is that texture, that really thick, creamy texture. And so in order to be able to achieve that, you have to really mix large amounts of paint and not rely on thinning out with water. So I've mixed some light pale blue here for my sky. And some people even use kind of like their palette knife to paint. That can give you some really nice textures with your oil paint. And so, you know, you can just pick up some paint with your palette knife and just kind of smash it down onto your canvas. That's also a really quick way to paint and get some interesting textures. Or you can just get a brush and start to spread it out on your brush as well, thinking about brush stroke, and you'll see that with how thick it is, you can really see the brush stroke left behind. So as long as you're using enough paint, you're going to see those kind of like trail marks of how you were using that brush, what direction you were painting in. And that's what's great about traditional oils as well. And so being able to recreate it even with water-soluble oils, you can really see that thickness in the paint. Just zooming in here so that you can kind of really see that texture. So you can see how thick the paint is. And so that's going to look great when it dries, seeing all those little brush strokes, that texture. Alright, so cleanup is really a breeze with the water-soluble oils because it's water-soluble. You can just use regular soap and water for your brushes. I like to use the Masters brush cleaner. It's a really great soap that's going to help preserve your brushes for a lot longer. And so all you do is give it a quick rinse with the water, and then you can go in and take your soap, swirl it around in the soap a good couple of times, and then either using your palm, or I like to just use the cap, you're going to go in and kind of swirl the brush around, really working the soap into your brush, giving it a good scrub. And then rinsing it out with clean water. And you want to do that until you're sure that the brush is running with clear water, like as you're scrubbing, you're not seeing any more paint left behind. And that way you're really going to preserve the life of your brushes.